Welcome back to the Everyday Saint podcast. It's Catholic communicator Eve Rosemary, and this week we are having a super fun episode where I have asked you all for your best and worst Catholic dating advice. And I have them all written down right here. We're going to go through them and I am going to rank them and give you my honest, unfiltered thoughts about these pieces of dating advice. Okay, can you guys hear that? Okay, literally have them written down on pieces of paper and I'm just going to pull them out. First question. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, it says, men are intimidated by you. That's why they don't ask you out. I prescribed by this piece of advice for a little while, to be honest with you. I really did have a theory that because of what I do for work and that I'm a little bit more career focused in that aspect, that men were intimidated by me. And not that that's why relationships weren't working out. It wasn't like a sole reason. I do feel like that this mentality can be really detrimental. And I say that because at the same time that our culture is telling women to be more ambitious, we're discouraging men from being ambitious and being courageous and taking the lead because women have been given that perspective, you go out and do this, you have to scale, we all have heard the messages, we've all seen it. But this is a piece of advice that men are intimidated by you and that's why they don't ask you out, I think is a really poor way of looking at yourself. It's also a little bit prideful to be like, oh, I am all that and more, and that's why men won't ask me out. I think that's really being disrespectful to guys to think that they can't hold their own and that they don't want to be the protectors and providers. Granted, there are some personalities that women have that can mean that it's a little bit more difficult for the man to take the lead and to find a guy who matches you in ambition. I know that, yes, that is something that I've personally struggled with in some of my relationships, of just not feeling challenged and inspired in that way. But I wouldn't say that that's the sole reason that someone's not asking me out. And I think that's really harmful to think that about yourself and to not be a little bit more forgiving to guys because they haven't been given a lot of times the role models and leaders necessary to understand the type of women that they can lead, that they even have the confidence in themselves that they can lead a woman who's a little bit more strong-headed and focused in on service. And sometimes, yes, women are a little bit more career focused. Maybe they're more focused on education and things like that. And so there is a good bit of strand of entrepreneurship and ambition that our generation tends to have. But that same strive for entrepreneurship and ambition can also correspond really well into motherhood, because those qualities that you're looking for, right? In order to have that entrepreneurial mindset, you can't procrastinate. You have to be self-disciplined. You have to be responsible. You have to look for service in a way that you can help other people. That's the whole point of working in the first place, is service of other people. So just because maybe a girl is a little bit more ambitious doesn't mean that she's not going to be a great mom and a great wife, right? I think that's maybe where this piece of advice comes from. So women, I'd caution you to maybe do take a little bit of an analysis on your life, just to ensure that you are prioritizing the correct things, but also God has given you a lot of gifts that don't need to be hindered just for the sake of finding a guy, because I think that God writes the best love stories. God cares for us, and God has given us a vocation for a reason, and He's not going to mess around with that. So we can, on both ends, hold our standards high and also be forgiving of the circumstances and the culture that we're growing up in. Next, I didn't rate it. Clearly, I didn't really agree with it, but I do see some correspondence. So I would give that piece of advice a 4 out of 10, because there is some self-reflection, but it's not totally true. Okay, next piece of advice. Work on yourself now so you're prepared to date in the future. I don't think there's anything that you can disagree necessarily with that, right? You should be always working on yourself and self-reflecting. I mean, even the greatest philosophers who were Catholic said that the unexamined life is not worth living. So we should be constantly in this place of examination and constantly be thinking about how we can improve ourselves and where God is calling us higher. But in the same note, I do want to live leave a little bit of a nuance here in that we cannot be so focused on working on ourselves that we feel the need to earn a spouse. I think so often I hear people say like, oh yeah, it's like once you stop looking, once you start focusing on yourself and becoming who you're made to be, then God will give you your spouse. And I think that's really a poor way to think about things, that God is not going to wait until you've reached a certain point of sanctity to then reward you with a spouse. That's not it, right? That's not how God works. That's not how he functions. Sure, there are things that you should be working on, but it's not like for the sake of then finding a spouse. Instead, it's like just work on yourself for the sake of working on yourself, and know that when someone enters the picture, they're not taking away too from that strive of working on yourself. Yes, your time is constrained because you have like an obligation to spend time with someone. So sure, that time that you maybe would have spent doing something else that would have technically been more of like a self-growth moment for you, now you're spending that time with someone else, talking with someone, going on a date, whatever that may be. Like, don't be so focused on working on yourself that you say no to opportunities when it comes to your vocation and say no to going on dates. I personally prescribe to the philosophy that you should always say yes to a first date within the realm of reason, because it's literally just taking time to get to know someone. So focus on yourself, but don't be so focused on yourself that you, one, think that God will then reward you with a spouse, right? Don't fall into that mindset. Or two, that you are just saying no to every opportunity because you're like, oh, I'm focusing on myself right now. Like, maybe God does have you in that space for a little bit of time, but I think God would also want us to be open to opportunities and to get to know ourselves better through those experiences. So with that in mind, I would probably give that piece of advice a 7 out of 10. Because generally, yeah, it's always good to self-reflect. Next piece of advice. First dates are about building curiosity, not deciding if you want to marry someone. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay, as someone who has recently been getting out in the dating scene a little bit more. Okay, there's not a lot of lore. If there was lore, guys, I would I would have Shelby on and share with you. We need to have another podcast with Shelby soon. If you've been listening for a while, you know Shelby is our beloved returning guest, but she's getting married next week, so she's been a wee bit busy. So maybe we'll have her on and just share from someone who's married, and then me who's just out in the wild, having a good time. But I remember kind of like getting back out into dating scene and dating culture. I was kind of like really nervous to do so, and I had to realize like there's literally no point in being nervous. Like going out for coffee for an hour and a half, 2 hours, however long you're there, going out to dinner and doing something and being able to look at another person and just get to know them, like, it's not that serious. It's not that serious. You do not have to walk away from that date knowing if you're going to marry that person. In fact, I think it takes away from the actual date if that's what you're so focused on. Like, going on a date is not an interview. It's not just trying to get to know someone for the sake of, do they check all these boxes? At the end of the date, all you have to answer for yourself is, do I want to spend more time with this person? That's it. That's it. That is the only thing you have to know by the time you leave that date. Do I want to spend more time with this person? It totally takes the pressure off of it too, because otherwise you're going to get on that date like a ball of nerves just because you're worried about if it's going to go well, if they're going to like you, if you're going to like them, if they meet all of these qualities. Like, no, just take some time to delight in the person who's in front of you. If you're there to look for a specific type of guy and they have to meet all those qualities, you are missing out on the fact that there is an entire person in front of you that God has given you the opportunity to get to know for that hour and a half to 2 hours that you're there. Personally, I'd say that's 10 out of 10 piece of advice. I found it really helpful as I've started dating a little bit more and meeting people just to get to know them. That's it. That's all I have to do. Speaking of getting to know people, I have to tell you about a pilgrimage opportunity that you don't want to miss out on. JP2 Project Theology of the Body Adult Pilgrimage is this July 11th through the 20th, and on this pilgrimage you'll be able to walk in the footsteps of St. John Paul II while discovering the places where he prayed, studied, and served. Throughout the pilgrimage, you'll also be able to dive deeply into St. John Paul II's theology of the body, which is really learning about the glory of who we are as human beings, human dignity. It's a really also practical piece, very applicable to the way that we interact with others today. It also can sometimes be a difficult thing to read through. So on this pilgrimage, you'll be able to walk through dedicated sessions led by Father Zach, who is the chaplain at Princeton University. Throughout this pilgrimage, you'll explore the mystery of the human person and God's plan for love, marriage, and sexuality, and encounter the rich spiritual, historical, and cultural treasures of Poland with other young adults, including the message of divine mercy, St. Faustina, St. Maximilian Kolbe, and much more. This is certainly an opportunity that you don't want to miss out on, so the link is in the description below to apply now. The next piece of advice that we have, if you stop looking, your person will come. I kind of mentioned this earlier. I don't think this is a good piece of advice. I don't, because does anyone ever stop looking? Truly. Does anyone ever stop looking? Like, I, again, have been someone who's been a little bit more maybe like trying to figure out post-grad life, so I have not been focused on relationships that much just because I've been in a little bit of survival mode. But that doesn't prevent someone from like going to the young adult events and like keeping your eyes out, or maybe you're at daily mass and you just have one eye open, just kind of seeing who's coming through the communion line. Okay, we all know. Humble enough to share it, woman enough to say it, okay? We all know that you look around. So truly, there's no way around the fact that you just stop looking, because the truth is we were made for relationships, right? Even friendships, we were made for relationships in general. So there's no capacity within us that truly stops looking. I will say, by stopping looking, maybe it means like don't stress about it. I think that can be true. You do not need to stress about your vocation. You do not need to stress about when you're going to meet that person. In fact, you can kind of like think about it as like it's actually a really exciting life that we get to live, in the fact that when we're single and we haven't met that person, any day we could meet our spouse. That's kind of exciting. Like any day could be the day that we find our vocation. Any day could be the day that God shares a little bit more about what we're meant to do. It's okay, the fact that you are still looking, that you're interested in meeting somebody, that's not a bad quality to have. But know that God cares for your vocation more than you ever could. So we can always trust in Him. So the piece of advice that if you stop looking, you'll find your spouse 2 out of 10. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's also that true or attainable. So 2 out of 10. Next piece of advice. Watch how he treats the Eucharist. Ooh, wait a minute. That's pretty good. I feel like that's pretty good because, one, it means you have to go to Mass with him, or go to adoration with him, or maybe that's where you meet. Who knows? Who's to say? But practically speaking, I don't know how you would see how he treats the Eucharist per se, because first of all, green flag, if he lets you go first for the Eucharist, like if you're sitting in the pew and technically as you walk out, if he is to your right or to your left, whichever, if he would by nature like go first in the communion life, but he stops and he lets you go first, green flag. Green flag. You also probably could tell that I'm from Wisconsin when I say that. Flag, bag, tag. We're ignoring it. Moving on. That would be the hope. Not all boys know to do that, and that's okay. Boys can be a little bit trained. They can be given these pieces of advice that maybe they haven't seen that happen before. So I think the guy should first of all let you go first in the communion line, and if not, maybe that's something you can bring up to him. So therefore, practically speaking, I don't know how you would necessarily see him treat the Eucharist in that moment. Also, you should be focused on receiving the Eucharist. But if you do have an opportunity where you get to see how he talks about the Eucharist, his reverence towards the Eucharist, I think that can be something that's, one, very attractive, but two, also really shows his devotion to the faith in general, and the reverence that he shows towards the Eucharist, right? Like this is my body given up for you. This is the source and summit of our faith. And it's also one of the most difficult things to believe. So if he has reverence towards it, it maybe shows that he's a little bit more into his faith, or is going to help lead you towards Christ and be respectful of you and your body, because if he has this reverence for the body of Christ, he will have reverence for how he loves you as well. So I think that's a great piece of advice. I don't know how practical it is, but honestly, there was someone that I was considering dating, and we went to a holy hour together. And I remember at the very end of the holy hour, when he went to kneel, he like really kneeled. Like it wasn't just like a little like genuflect. No, he was like on the floor kneeling. And I was really impressed by that. I remember like thinking like, oh, he really does have reverence towards the Eucharist. And now he's considering the seminary. So you know what? You can't win them all. But needless to say, I do think that practically, like, that is a good piece of advice. So 10 out of 10, good piece of advice. Okay, we have 3 left here. So bringing it down. Don't date until you're fully healed. I do not agree with this piece. I think there are certain things for sure that you should heal from first. Like if you've just been in a relationship, you're probably not in a place to get into another relationship. Like if you're still constantly thinking about your ex, you should probably not be dating somebody else right away. You should probably just take some time for some self-reflection, let your heart heal a little bit. But the truth is, none of us will ever be fully healed. I remember the last time I was really considering dating somebody, like back in college. This was like the first time that I was really considering a relationship I knew was going to be more serious. I had been in relationships in high school that every single time I was in those relationships, I was always the one to get broken up with. I'd never broken up with someone. So obviously with that in mind, my heart was kind of in a sensitive place. And even though it'd been a while since I'd been in those relationships, as I was considering dating this person, so much was getting brought back up for me that I was really scared to go into a relationship because I was like, I'm not fully healed. Like, not even just like from the sense of those relationships. I think there was just other things that I was going through at the same time. And I was like, I'm not fully healed. I can't get into a relationship. And I think what I learned is that you don't have to be fully healed from life's throes to be able to love somebody else. Like your heart, as you extend mercy, as you give love, it expands. And we are called to give love when it hurts. We are called to give love even when we're suffering, right? Like that's what the crucifixion was. We are called to love even when it's difficult to do so. I think in relationships, it's easy to fall into that trap of saying like, oh, you know, this, that, and the other thing are going on in my life, so I can't be in a relationship. And I don't think that's always true. I think there are certain things, like certain traumas in relationships that you have to get over in order to move on, in order to get into that relationship and enter into it confident. But know that there's probably always going to be something in your life that you're going through. And actually, by being able to go through it with someone else, you're already learning how to go through difficult things together. So depending on what it is, like I think this is very like dependent on what you're trying to heal from. Know that you don't have to be fully healed to be in a relationship. And know that that person too, though, is not the person who's going to heal you. If you have a relationship centered on Christ and a life centered on Christ, that's what's going to heal you and will give you the capacity to love in that relationship the way that the other person deserves to be loved and the way that you also deserve to be loved. Oh, raining. I don't agree with, you don't have to be fully healed to be in a relationship. So 2 out of 10, because I think there are some times that you do need to be a little bit more healed than others, but 2 out of 10 overall. Second to last piece of advice. If it didn't work out once, it likely won't work out again. If anyone's listening to this and knows me well, they're laughing. They are laughing right now. So my personal take on this is that likely it will not work out again. If it didn't work out once, it likely will not work out again. So I would agree with that. However, I feel like everything here has a however. If it's been a considerable amount of time and you haven't spent that time talking to one another, I think it could potentially work out in the future. My gripe with this is I remember when I was in high school, I dated someone for like 8 months or so, and we tried to be friends after the relationship. Eventually, obviously, because we tried to be friends after the relationship, the feelings didn't go away. And then maybe I don't know if we tried to like actually have a relationship again or if it was just kind of up in the air and we just decided not to. I don't entirely remember those details, but I do know that my poor heart took a 1.5 years to get over that boy, even though we only dated for 8 months, because I was trying again, because I like let that relationship, one, just a friendship where we were talking. I tried to make that and let that continue on after we had dated. Never a good idea. Never a good idea. And then tried to get back together only a couple months after we had broken up the first time. Which, again, there's not enough in a relationship to change or to learn and to grow from for that then to work a second time. I think serious growth and serious self-reflection have to happen in between if you were to get back together. And by that, I mean like probably a year or more in order to really reassess and reevaluate and take your emotions out of it. It's really difficult to discern if you really should get back into that relationship if your emotions are heightened, which they will be after you get broken up with, or if you break up with that person. And you can just lead with regret versus really leading with conviction, and it's hard to discern what is what. So my piece of advice is that it could work. I think it's likely not to work, but if it does work, you need some serious time in between it. So the piece of advice, if it didn't work out once, it likely won't work out again. I would say it's like 8 out of 10 piece of advice. I would agree with that. And then for the last piece of advice we have, if you're Catholic, you should only date Catholics. I think my opinion on this has actually changed more recently. I've met some people who have dated people who were not Catholic and then became Catholic. I am not saying you should flirt to convert. I am not a proponent of that. However, I think that you can date someone who is open to being Catholic, right? You can't change someone's upbringing. And I think especially as someone, like I live in Washington, D.C., it is a huge melting pot here of people. And I would love to date and marry a Catholic man, but I don't know that they have to be Catholic right when I start dating them. And I do want to explain myself a little bit more here because my Catholic faith, specifically my Catholic faith, is really important to me. So I think it's pretty obvious to the guy that I'm not ever, and I have to be honest about that, like I am not open to converting from the Catholic faith. This is what I believe. This is what I stand by. I am not someone who just goes to Mass on Sundays, but like this is a part of my daily life. That it's not just something I do, like this is me. And so there's no way around that. So I think if you're like that into the Catholic faith, it's almost like someone who's dating you, they have to understand that. And if they can see how important that is to you, I think if you're with someone who's very strong in a general Christian faith and can see that, will understand how important the Catholic faith is to you. Not in the sense of like then they'd be open to converting, but they understand what they're getting into. So if they're willing to match that and meet that, I think that speaks volumes to someone's character. I think someone can have a really great Christian faith and lead you well, but there are some stipulations. Like you really do have to think about, okay, is this person open to converting at some point? And is that a deal breaker for you? Because I know some people who have gotten married in different faiths, and that person maybe ends up converting. It also can cause a lot of issues in the marriage. Yeah, definitely lead with caution because I do know quite a few people who have really struggled in their marriage because they don't both believe in the Catholic faith, even if it's a similar Christian denomination. I also would advise women that most of the time, when they've done studies on this, most of the time the children will always follow the faith of the father, right? Not of the mother, of the father specifically. So if the guy that you're dating is not Catholic, are you okay with your kids potentially not being Catholic? Or more likely to, by nature of the fact that your husband's not Catholic. Personally, that thought kind of scares me. I would really want my kids to be specifically Catholic and live out that Catholic faith, especially because of our belief in the Eucharist and how important that is and the sacraments. So that's something that's really important to me, that there's almost like no way. When the Catholic faith is that important to you, sometimes there's like no way around it. But I also know plenty of people that their fiancés are in OCIA, or they're going through it together, or they were raised Christian and just didn't know anything about the Catholic faith, and then in getting to know the woman, wanted to become Catholic. So there are stories like that, but I would say those are probably the exception and not the rule. So I don't want to like say no, absolutely not, don't date people who aren't Catholic. Just go in with those understandings and go in with your standards and your values held high, unashamed of your Catholic faith. You don't want to ever be put in a place where you feel like you have to hinder your faith because of someone else. Like that's not the point of a relationship in the first place, is to lead one another to heaven, right? That's boom. Like top priority. So if that's in mind, just be cautious of the way that then you are choosing to date. Okay, we have nothing left. Nothing left in our special question bowl. Thank you all so much for listening today. It's been so lovely to just chat with you about dating. What better topic to talk about? Speaking of dating, I am booking chastity presentations for middle school and high school students for the 2026 to 2027 school year. So if you know of any schools, principals, faith formation classes, retreats, conferences going on where they need a Catholic chastity speaker, all of the details are linked in the description below, and I would love to be put in touch with them. Thank you again so much for listening, and God bless you.